So this is the model that I shared last time, and this came out of extensive research asking people about what were the behaviors and activities of the kind of leader that you really want to follow. You know, the person that you feel motivated to work alongside, you would follow their lead. So this was the model that I shared, and we're going to be focusing on the purpose section and looking at how do you create that sense of purpose, because really, in a sense, this is where it all comes from. Because if there isn't a job to be done, if there isn't a purpose to be fulfilled, if there isn't a vision to be actualized, then you have no need of a leader. You know, you only need a leader when you need a lot of people to come together and do something collectively. So I'm going to stop sharing because I'd rather you were seeing my face than looking at slides. So the thing about purpose, you know, when we first started doing this kind of looking at leadership in this kind of way, people used to talk a lot about visionary leaders. And if you ask somebody, what do you think makes a great leader? A lot of people will mention vision, and a lot of people will mention charisma. And I don't dispute that at all. I just don't find it very useful, because when I'm teaching a class on leadership, if I say to people, well, you know, go and be visionary and charismatic, it doesn't really help. So it's much more useful to look at what do the best leaders do. And yes, there are visionary leaders in the world, and we can all name examples of them. But for most people in leadership positions, they're part of a large organization, and it's not really up to them to set the direction for the whole organization. So it's not so much about having vision, it's about creating a sense of purpose for the people who work for you. Now, if it's your own business, obviously, you know, then you're going to have your own vision. You're in charge of where you go, you're in charge of where you take the business. For the people who are working for you, the people who are part of your team, the people who are going to bring that vision to life, they may not share exactly the same vision, but there is a reason why they came to work for you. There's a reason why they're in your team. And that's where the sense of purpose comes into it, is what is the meaning of what you're doing? What does somebody get out of it? And the easiest way for me to talk about this really is to give you some examples of it. I had a very good boss once, a long time ago, because I've worked for myself for nearly 30 years now, so it's a long time that I had a boss. I'm not going to comment on myself as a boss, but I had a really good boss once who was very good at the purpose side of leadership. Because the organization that I was working in was, it was a kind of environmental project where, and in the city, part of land that had been used for industrial purposes, and then derelict buildings, you know, just a lot of mess, really. That land was being redeveloped. So initially it was made into parkland and turned into a visitor attraction. So I worked in the team that would be operating the visitor attraction when it was all built and it was all ready to welcome some visitors. And so my boss used to say, our purpose as an operational team is to create a great day out for 4 million visitors. It was only going to be open for a small amount of time, and the target was to get 4 million visitors into the attraction, and our job was to make sure that they enjoyed their day when they came to visit. And so, you know, this is 30 years ago, and I remember him saying that so clearly because he said it so often. And that was a real clarity of purpose. And the way that he used that was to help us decide what needed to be done and what didn't need to be done. Because you can imagine a short-term project like that, we were under pressure with deadlines a lot of the time. There were a lot of occasions when we would have liked another month, but we didn't have another month to do something. And he would say to us if we were in a meeting, and you know, I remember one occasion we were arguing about what colour uniforms ought to be. So think about what all the staff are going to, what colour should it be? And after about 20 minutes of this argument, he said, right, stop. What is the significance of the colour of the uniforms when it comes to giving our visitors a great day out? And everybody was silent. And he said, okay, Somebody take responsibility for this, make a decision, and let's move on to more important things. So that sense of purpose helped us make decisions in tough times. It gave us a sense of doing something meaningful, because most of the reasons why people go to work in the leisure and hospitality sectors is because they like to see other people enjoying themselves. So it really focused us on that's a purpose, is we're going to give 4 million people a great day out. To give you a slightly more mundane example, I had somebody on a training course recently, we were talking about this exact thing, and this young woman worked in anti-money laundering in one of the UK banks. And I said to her, so what do you think is the purpose of your team? And she said, well, we have to fill out all the forms and we have to go through the anti-money laundering compliance with everybody who opens a new account. And I said, okay, yeah, that's what you do. What's the purpose of it? She said, compliance. And you could see, she was really not at all inspired by this. It was a tough job. They were a small team, and it was a lot of work. And she said, it's hard work, but it has to be done, for compliance. So I said to her, okay, let's look at this another way then. What would happen if you didn't do your job? And she said, and I said, don't say the bank would not be compliant. What would be the consequences if you didn't do your job or didn't do it well? And she said, well, we could be investigated by the government authorities, and the bank could be closed down if we hadn't done everything that we're supposed to do. And she said, and also, if we allowed criminals to open bank accounts with us, then we could be opening ourselves up to a lot of other problems. I said, okay, so now tell me, what's the purpose of the work you do? And she said, we're protecting the bank. And her whole expression and her demeanor changed with that thought. And she said to me, I'm really excited now to go back and talk to my team about this, because I can really see the value of what we're doing.
Brilliantly said, Diane. I would like to, just pause here and just bring this again out and highlight this fact that a purpose is what creates value.
Yes.
It helps me see my value inside the organization, inside the business. It helps me see the value of my contribution, even if I'm just filling up a form. But there is a contribution that even filling out that form I'm making in the business, in the company. What is that value? Because I can only feel important when I see value of what I am doing and who I am to the organization. And when I feel that importance, it's a human psychology. Leadership is all about making psychological impacts on people, right? It's about impacting and influencing their psychology. So when we talk about, showing them the value of their work, that's what purpose is, the most significant thing and most significant tool that can help you make this happen. And that is why I think today, when we are talking to organizations and we are talking to business leaders and we ask them, what is the purpose? The answer to this question and helping the business leaders to actually find the answer to this question has become so important.
It really has, yes. And sometimes leaders will say, well, I know what my purpose is, but I can't speak for other people.
Yeah.
Well, no, you can't, but you can make it easy for them to speak for themselves. So when you articulate the purpose of your business or your department or your team, then often what works best is something really simple and clear. Because the more complex you make it, the more you narrow it down.
Absolutely.
But when you make it more open-ended, then it gives people the opportunity to think about what matters to them and how they can find something meaningful in that purpose that relates to what's important to them. So my lady said, well, we protect the bank.
Yeah.
So that's very, very simple. But then members of her team can go in and say, well, I'm helping to build a strong corporation. Or they can say, I'm making sure that the law is being upheld, or I'm protecting customers from anything going wrong at the bank. So they can find their own aspect of that is meaningful to them, that is going to make them want to get out of bed in the morning and go to work and do a great job.
Absolutely. I'd like to share an example here. I've heard currently I'm working with an organization, and this was a question which I asked them long time back, about the purpose and the mission and the vision. And I sat down with the business owners and we created the purpose, identified the purpose rather, and then recreated the mission and the vision statement. And then I worked with their entire team on taking that purpose and creating a shared purpose with the team. And it is quite interesting because the entire, like, I'll just focus on the sales team right now. The sales team, when I asked them, who are you? This question, who are you to the organization? And they were like, we are the sales team. I was like, okay, what are you taking out there that this organization wants you to take? Products. And I looked at the owner, I said, do you want them to take out products? They said, no, because the entire purpose of the organization was to become a solution provider. You cannot provide solutions by selling products, right? Your approach,
Yes.
you're going to sell a pen is that you're selling a product. But if you're going to sell writing tools or something which can make your communication more better, more impactful, that's a solution. A solution which we can achieve with this tool, with this product. So the entire mindset of that team had to be completely shifted from being a sales executive or a sales manager to actually becoming consultants. Their entire thing became, we are not sales managers and sales executives. We are actually consultants to the customer. So the body language changed, the language that they were speaking to the customer changed, the entire script changed, the way they were approaching, the way they were, even interacting with the customers. Entire thing changed. The owner was amazed that just by changing one word, the entire mindset shifted, the entire approach of the sales team, the presentation, everything shifted. I mean, that is of course the power of neuro-linguistic programming. We just change one word and everything changes. But this is something that I really wanted to share, this purpose, this just one small simple thing about understanding and realizing the value of purpose can change the way you have been going out in the market. You have been actually leading your team, and your team is then talking or interacting to the customers, just like you said, that, the way what are we doing for the bank? That way, that changes the way she was leading the team inside the bank, as well as interacting with the customers, because they are also protecting the customers' interests.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. That's a great story. And I can't help wondering, if you hadn't had that conversation with the owner of the business and you hadn't had that session with the sales team, they would have gone in a totally different direction, wouldn't they?
That's exactly what was happening. The owner was going in this direction and the team was heading in the other.
Yeah. Yeah. So having a purpose is also how you create a kind of alignment in the team so that everybody's putting their effort in going in the same direction. And without a shared purpose, what you can find is that people are putting energy into doing different things, and sometimes they even work against each other. So it's not just a sort of, oh, it would be a nice thing to have, we all feel good about ourselves. It does actually make a difference to the performance of a team and ultimately to the performance of a business. People need the clarity about, why am I doing this? What's the point?
Exactly. And when you have that clarity, your communication and your interactions, even with your customers, is very different and impactful, because you are not going to be selling anything to them. Rather, you will be actually, doing them a service. Even if you're selling them a product, but you will be doing them a service. So the way that you will be approaching your clients will be completely different, because there will be a connection with the client's purpose as well that you will create with your language.
Yes. Yes, and that's the other thing, isn't it? It's not just the internal team that benefit from that clarity. It's also then the way that you communicate with your customer base, because clients can say, oh, I can see what you stand for, and I like that, and I want to be part of it, and I can see the congruence between what I do and what you do. Therefore, I feel like we would benefit from working together, and it becomes more of a partnership relationship then, rather than a sort of supplier and buyer type of relationship. Yeah, but we're getting ahead of ourselves, aren't we?
It's quite interesting, because whenever I have had purpose conversations, with owners, and then I've brought the team in, being the owner, keeping him present there itself in that particular workshop. I've had another example that I would love to share. This was a building material company, all right? And the purpose of that company was to make their customer happy. And believe me, when we got this purpose out in the team and the workshop, from the vision and the values and everything, that was the vision of the owner of the company. I want to see customer satisfaction. So when we recreated that and brought it inside a purpose, and we took it to the team, and the team, the team was shop floor level people, because they are the ones dealing with the customers. It was a B2C company. When they came with this clarity, I'm supposed to make the customer happy, because if the customer's happy, he'll buy from me. The entire approach, again, when the customer was walking in, the culture inside the store changed. Inside a store, the culture completely changed. So it's like, even if the person on the counter, if they see that the salesperson is busy, he leaves his counter and comes out, attends to the client, makes sure that there is somebody who's attending to the client, not just attending and answering questions and showing them the product, but also, doing certain things which their whole thing and the result that they were looking for. I want to make the customer smile. That's what the team goal became. We would want to make our customer smile. And it was such a brilliant transformation inside the culture and the organization, and their results and productivity. They had repeat footfalls coming in. They had a growth in customer numbers. And it was amazing, the transformation that happened. So it's just so beautiful when you can lead with purpose, right?
Absolutely, yes. And it encompasses a lot of things. When we did the original research that led to the model being developed, people talked about vision, but they also talked about things like, I worked for a leader who gave me clear targets. I worked for a leader who celebrated success. And you can only celebrate success if you have the clarity of what you want to achieve.
Exactly.
And there were other things that people said, like working for somebody who encouraged me to think for myself. And you might say, well, what's that got to do with purpose? Well, as long as you're clear about what we're looking to achieve, then you can give people a lot more flexibility about how they do the job. And most people like to feel that they've got some choice and they've got some control, that they're not just sort of, carrying out somebody else's instructions. So
I think that also influences accountability in people.
Yes, yeah. And if you have clear purpose, then you can do a lot more things than if you're just giving people instructions about the work. So may I go back to my slide?
Yes.
So if you look at the detail of this, Zoom's done another upgrade, and I'm looking at thinking, oh, it looks different. So if you look at the detail of this, purpose sits on top of goal setting and strategy. So a sense of purpose often is very, very heavily related to having clear goals and having a clear strategy. Because what tends to happen is that we start out with a sort of a very tangible and practical idea. You start a business and you say, I want to find 6 customers in my first 2 months, or I want to sell this amount of product. So we have some really tangible and very simple goals to begin with. And then as a business becomes established, you start to think about, okay, so if I'm going to expand a little bit, what else am I going to do? And then you have to start thinking about what would be in keeping with my original thought. So, if I'm selling a product, I want to sell other products. Obviously, I want to sell something that's related. If I'm selling building materials, then I'm not suddenly going to start selling pajamas. You want something that's going to be related. And so often in the development of a business, what happens is that your purpose kind of evolves as you expand your offering to people. But then with an established business, sometimes you also need to revisit the purpose and say, is the reason why we're doing what we're doing still relevant to our customer base? Do people now want something a little bit different from us? Do we want something a little bit different from life? So, you may have started a business because you wanted to have control, you wanted to have a sense of doing things your own way, you wanted to be in charge, you wanted to see if you could do it. And then you build the business and you're successful. And then there comes a point when you think, well, yes, that's all been good. And now I'm much more motivated by having a business that creates something positive in my community, for example, or that gives younger people the opportunity to learn about this industry. And so you might then shift the way that you run your organization in service of that different sense of purpose. Because as we go through life, we do get motivated by different things. You know, at different phases of our lives, different things are important to us. So if it's your business, then the purpose of your business will probably reflect that. If you're part of a larger organization, it might mean that you kind of change the way that your career goes. You might look for a slightly different type of role. You know, I started my career in retail sales, and the first couple of years, I got enormous satisfaction out of beating my sales target every season. But then there came a point when I realized that all my job satisfaction was coming from seeing my people develop. And the time that I spent coaching the youngsters and helping them gain the confidence to go and engage a customer in a conversation and to help them find what they wanted and make the sale. So eventually I did a sort of sideways shift and went into learning and development full time. So sense of purpose can change, but it all is built upon clear goal setting and strategy. And that's something that takes time, and it takes sometimes quite a lot of thought. But you'll see that's not the only thing in that box. Goal setting and strategy is also built upon an awareness of the external conditions. And this is something that's really relevant for a lot of businesses at the moment, because we are seeing so much change going on in the world on so many levels. We've got lots of different economic changes going on. We've got changes in the way that people approach work. So this kind of psychological contract with an employer is changing. We're seeing the rise of AI technology that's making a huge difference to the way that people do their jobs and what people want from their jobs. There's so many things changing all of the time. And you can probably come up with lots of examples of companies that were so focused on what they were doing, they're looking inward, they forgot to look around and see what everybody else was doing, and they've been left behind. So an awareness of the external conditions is always something that will inform your goal setting and your strategy. And those things put together then create a great platform for your overall sense of purpose. But, goals and a strategy are not a replacement for a sense of purpose unless you have that driving force that says, this is why we're doing this. And the goal setting and the strategy on their own are not enough. Shall I say a little bit about strategy as well? And it's one of those things, people think there's something sort of magical and mystical about strategy, that it's a great sort of intellectual concept. And I'm a bit of a simple soul when it comes to business speak. So some people say, well, what's strategy? For me, there's a gap between where we are and where we want to be. Yeah. And so strategy is just what gets us from one place to the other. Yeah. And you can make that as simple or as complicated as you like. But your strategy is how you get from where you are today to where you want to be. And, in some businesses, you need a very detailed strategy because of the complexity of your operation. But in others, the strategy is simply, we are going to offer this to this marketplace at this price. And sometimes the strategy is as much about what you're not going to focus on as what you are going to focus on. Sometimes it's really good to be clear in your strategy that we are staying away from these markets, or we're discontinuing this product. And if we have the choice between doing this or that, we'll always do this. Yeah. You look like you're going to say something there, Nahid. Did you have a question for me?
In terms of strategy, yes, of course, because when you mentioned about the external environment also having an influence, and what we are talking about right now is basically looking at strategy from the perspective of continuous improvement and innovation coming into the strategy based on the external environment, based on the internal of the organization. So when we look at that, there are some great examples you very well said, that example of Kodak, example of BlackBerry, Nokia, these were like kingpins in their industry at some time. And what you said actually, that they did not look at what was happening in the external environment, not just in the current time, but also being able to being proactively looking at the future, looking at the changes which are coming in. And today when we look at the environment, I think in the strategy, including technological advancements, is something which is compulsory. So when we look at external environments, we also need to add one bit to it, which is the technology, the changes inside technology across the world, what's developing, what's coming next, and how is that going to disrupt my business?
Yes, absolutely. And the thing is that most businesses are dependent on their technology. Even if you think you're a fairly low-tech business, you're probably dependent on your PCs, you're dependent on your mobile phones, you're dependent on so many small aspects of technology, even if you're not really a sort of massively tech-oriented business. But for those that are kind of, providing services online and so on, you really can't afford not to be thinking about your tech strategy as well. And I work a lot in the tech sector, and I constantly meet people who they've gone into a new company and they say to me, they have underinvested for years. And now, we've got a massive job to do because nobody's really been thinking about how do we keep our technology up to date. So yes, maybe we should put that in there, external conditions and technology.
And that has a significant impact on your own leadership behavior as well as the behavior of your people, and in fact the culture as well, because there are some people who do not understand technology and they create a sense of fear, and that comes into the organization culture, and that's when we start seeing there is a disruption in what purpose was being led. So when it comes down to leading with a purpose, and for a leader, there is a huge task for leaders actually when we talk about creating those goals and strategies. And also, when we look at the perspective of goal setting as well, when we talk about strategy and goal setting from that perspective, I think we need to also understand that leadership is about influencing behaviors. So when we talk about purpose, it gives us the qualitative measures through which we can measure the success in terms of sustainable growth of our business, in terms of, quality of performance, quality of service, quality of the business that is being given out. So somewhere
we
all
make
of
our
these
customers
things.
happy. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But yes, you do. You need the tangible goals as well, so that you can measure your success on a more pragmatic basis. So did we make our customers happy? Yes, and you can do all your customer feedback surveys and all that kind of thing. Although I do feel there's a bit of fatigue in that area now, that we're all being asked for feedback about everything. I had an Amazon delivery the other day. Somebody got out of the car and pushed an envelope through my letterbox, and then 2 minutes later, bing, we've delivered your parcel. Please give us feedback. How was your driver?
I know what you mean. Yeah.
And much as I want to be helpful, there is a limit to what I can say about the capability of somebody who pushed an envelope through my letterbox. I digress. The other part to the foundation for your purpose, and we've talked a little bit about strategy, but then we've got goals. And I think this is something that is worth spending a bit of time on, because setting goals is something that people think is easy. I just decide what I want and write it down. And it is easy if that's all you do. But what we know when we look at the psychology of this is a lot of people have bad habits in the way they think about their goals. So they say things like, I want to find 10 new customers. Oh, but I haven't got time to do that. And even if I could, how do I know that they'll want to buy from me? And I want to buy a new car. Oh, but I can't really afford it. And even before they've started to think about the strategy to achieve the goal, they've talked themselves out of it. They're already sort of explaining all the reasons to themselves as to why this is not going to happen. And maybe a little bit extreme, but you get the principle, is that people have bad habits in the way they think about their goals, especially in the UK. We're very kind of, negative about that, and I want never gets is one of the things I was told as a child. And it doesn't really kind of foster a lot of goal orientation. So when I first learned NLP, one of the things that really helped me and really cemented the kind of the personal transformation that came from learning NLP was learning how to frame my goals effectively. And I was somebody that had never really had very clear goals. I had sort of rough ideas about sort of what I wanted, but I know people who from the age of about 12 had clear goals and all the milestones and so on. I was never somebody like that. So it made a big difference to me when I learned how to set goals properly. And so the NLP well-formed outcomes pattern is one of my favorites, because my sense is that most people, if they apply that consistently, can really transform huge amounts of areas of your life just with this one pattern. You know, we think, oh, NLP is like such a big field and there's so many techniques and so on. In the interests of kind of where do I start and how do I keep it simple, I always think the well-formed outcomes pattern is a really good beginning, because we talk about outcomes in NLP because it's a nice general term. It can be used to describe what do I want to achieve by making this phone call that I'm about to make. But it could also be, what do I want to achieve over the next 10 years in my business? It can be something on a grand scale, or it can be something very immediate. You can have outcomes for professional things. You can have outcomes, for example, what do I want to get out of my weekend at home? What do I want to get out of my visit to my parents? Or, how am I going to spend my evening now that I've got the opportunity to, people do have me time, I'm going to have a little bit of me time. What do I want to get out of that? Do I just want to relax, or do I want to do something special, and so on? So outcomes it's a good phrase because it describes things on many different kinds of scales. So the idea of a well-formed outcome is to do with the way it's formed in your imagination. So the way you think about it helps you to achieve the outcome. So we're moving away from those bad habits of, oh, that will never happen, to, okay, this is how I'm thinking about this, and therefore I can make it happen. So I do have this on a slide. Let me show you this briefly. So it's the strategy slide. Here we go. So there are 6 criteria for a well-formed outcome. So you have to be able to tick all of these 6 boxes to say my outcome is well-formed. So in the time that we have today, I'm not going to go through all of these in massive detail. The top 4 are very similar to the kind of thing that you would get in other models for goal setting and objective setting and so on. We're stated in the positive, so you're describing getting what you want rather than not getting what you don't want. For the simple reason that we want the brain focusing on the desired outcome, not focusing on the problems. This is why when people say things like, I'm going to give up smoking, or I'm going to give up drinking coffee, they rarely succeed because they're still focusing on the thing that they say they want to get out of their life. So we state it in the positive. The second thing is that your outcome should be sensory specific. And what I mean by that is that you can describe it in tangible terms of things that you can see, hear, touch, taste or smell in some cases. For most of us in our professional lives, we don't have to worry too much about taste or smell. But if your business is a restaurant, then that's going to be very important. So we're looking at if there was a moment in time when you could say, yes, I've done it. What did you just see or hear that let you know that you'd achieved your outcome? And that's what we're looking for in terms of it being sensory specific. It's got to be under your control. So it's not well formed if it requires somebody else to do it for you. And it has to have a clear context. And that might be to do with putting a time deadline on it, or it might be, this is something that I want in certain circumstances. So it's just about sort of building a frame around it and saying, this is where and when I want this outcome, and therefore, by definition, excluding some things. So those things are, let's say, not really that different from other models of goal setting. It's the 5th one that I want to elaborate on a little bit. It's the idea that there's no secondary gain. So the idea of secondary gain is that sometimes a person may say, I have this goal and this is what I want, but nothing's happening. And they're kind of staying a bit stuck in where they started from. And if you say to somebody in those circumstances, so you said that you have this goal and you want to achieve this, how is it that you're not making any progress on it? Often people will say things like, because I'm lazy, because I don't have any willpower, because I'm too busy doing other things, because I never get round to it. And that's one way of describing it, but that's a very negative way of describing it. It doesn't really help. And in NLP, we're always looking for what works, what will make a difference, what will help us achieve something. So the idea of secondary gain is to say, if you have this goal and you're not making progress towards it, must be something that's really good about the current situation that you don't want to leave behind. So, for example, I was coaching a young woman who was at the beginning of her career, and her boss had suggested to her that she take her professional exams. And she was quite enthusiastic about it, except that she said, when I said, so how come you haven't enrolled in the course yet? She said, I don't want to give up my social life. You know, she was quite young. She had a nice circle of friends. They would go out to eat together or go to the cinema. And, you know, they spent a lot of time together. And she said, I don't want to give that up. And when I asked her, so how much time would you have to spend studying if you enrolled in the course? She actually said to me, I don't know. Because she had stayed so stuck in this idea that I don't want to give up my social life that she hadn't even started to look at what was involved in taking the course. So that's an example of a secondary gain, is by not doing anything about the goal to get her professional qualifications, you know, she was enjoying a nice social life. So that's an example of secondary gain. Now, I'm not saying there's always secondary gain, but if you've got a goal that you're not making any progress towards, it's usually an indicator that there's something different going on there. And that would be my first sort of set of questions is there something really good about the present situation that you feel like you might have to give up in order to achieve your goal? And, you know, that can come in all sorts of different forms. One of the more interesting ones that I came across, again, actually was to do with exams. Somebody who had been doing advanced driving and belonged to a club of advanced drivers, and, you know, they spent a lot of time honing their skills, but he hadn't taken his advanced driving test. And we had a conversation about that. And what he eventually realized was that his two closest friends in the club had both passed the test the first time they took it. And he wanted to also pass the first time, but he wasn't totally confident that he would. So what he realized was, if I don't take the test, I don't fail it. So another great example of secondary gain. And we can look at this in lots of different arenas. I have some also. Do I have time for a business example as well, Nahid?
Yes, certainly. We are just close to closing time.
Okay, so very quickly then, this was the IT department of a finance company that had gone through a period of growth. So the IT department had grown from about 7 or 8 people up to 35 people, something like that. And the new IT director had gone in and reorganized things and was sort of starting to put them into the structure of a nice professional department. And he said to me one day, the last thing I need to do now is to institute a help desk. Because at the moment, if somebody has a problem with their technology, they just phone whoever they know in the tech team. And so, you know, he's put all the pieces in place. He had a couple of people who were delegated to be the help desk. They had some software, and he said, all I've got to do now is tell the rest of the company. They weren't expecting a lot of calls. It was only sort of 400 people in the company. They were maybe going to get 1 or 2 calls a day at most. So it wasn't, you know, a big thing. So he sent an email out to the whole company saying, you know, from now on, if you've got a problem with any of your technology, phone this number and speak to one of these 2 people. And you can probably predict what happened, which is nothing. Everybody continued to just phone whoever they knew in the tech team. And what I thought was really intelligent, this was a man who had done his NLP training with me. So, you know, I'd like to think that I had some influence in this. But he then said to himself, okay, so I could just go and be the IT director and, you know, shout at everybody and tell them they must use the helpline. But he said, I knew that wasn't going to really make the difference. So what he did, he thought about what's the secondary gain? What do people like about what they're currently doing that would be missing if they did what I'm asking them to do? And he identified, well, they want to phone somebody that they know, that they like, that they think will want to help them. So he said to the two people who were the help desk, he said, over the next 2 weeks, go and visit every department, go and talk to people about their technology, find out if they've got any problems, find out which apps they use, find out, you know, if there's anything that we could do for them that we're not currently doing. Just go and ask questions and listen. And he did that. The two people went out there and people started using the help desk with no further instruction or encouragement because, you know, now, well, shall I phone my friend who's a developer who's always a bit grumpy when I ask for some help? Or shall I phone that nice person who came to see me last week and was so interested? Now I can ring them and say, you know, that problem I told you about, it's just happened. Will you come and have a look? I just think that's a great example of working with the secondary gain.
You know, it also aligns very well with this urge to stay inside our comfort zone.
Yes, yes, indeed, it does. Yes.
It does. So when we are even talking about customers where we are offering something, a product which is new, innovative, you know, and business leaders today are actually coming up with a lot of innovative products and ideas, and they take it to the customers, and the customers are, okay, yes, it's very nice, but when it comes down to actually taking the application or taking the product, there is, you know, hesitancy in there. And that is not because your product is not good. That is because it will change the way I've been doing things.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yes, people feel safe doing what they know. Yeah. And even if there's the opportunity to do something that looks better, there's often a bit of hesitation. As you say, it's about comfort zones, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah. It's like, just if you can, you know, because when we talk about taking this to my team and making them understand this, if I speak to them in this language that, you know, you're doing this is how it has always been done. And we are talking about changing how we have been doing it. So what is it that stops us from changing to a new pattern is basically the comfort zone. And inside the comfort zone, now we need to find out what is it inside the comfort zone that just, you know, is kind of like the chains in my legs from moving. It's limiting me from moving. So you just need to identify those chains, because the moment you identify them, you break them.
Yes, yeah. And this is such an important skill in the modern world because there's so much change happening all the time. Now, I was on a call a couple of weeks ago with somebody who was asked what he was doing about a certain innovation, and he said, we've been through a lot of change recently, so I'm just waiting for things to settle down, and then we'll implement this. You know, and I said to him, I don't think that's going to work for you.
It's going to happen, yeah.
You know, nothing ever settles down anymore. You go from one change to the next to the next.
It's always happening. It's constant. You can't ever think of you will settle down, because by the time you are in phase 2, there is another one which is right there knocking at your door.
Yes. Yes. So our ability to handle change and to adapt and to move ourselves through our comfort zone and, you know, out into new areas is a really, really important skill in today's world.
Indeed, indeed. I would like to stop here, Diane. We are at the end of our time, and I think we've really covered it, from taking it from the purpose to the goals and strategies to actually moving to where we are going to go in the next webinar, which is the well-formed outcomes. And in the next webinar, we are going to go into more details of that, and we are going to discuss how exactly that significantly impacts and influences your leadership and your success as a business leader. So I open the floor to any questions if anybody has. Nisar, you had questioned about how do you find the secondary gain that is keeping you away from your goal. Let me know if we have answered, or you'd still like us to address that question.
No, I did find that interesting, to be honest. This thought that, you know, sometimes you make goals, but you don't move forward, and, you know, what might be the core reason behind that. But yeah, I am curious how you do that. Like, how do you find what's keeping you away from your goals?
We'd invite you to come for the next session.
Yes.
Oh, that's right. Oh, you're leaving me in a cliffhanger.
We
I'll
are
find out in
taking
the
it
next
one step
episode.
at a time, you know. So the next one is all about well-formed outcomes. So we will be discussing in details because we've kept this short of 45 minutes sessions. So we
Okay.
don't want to go into too much of details because today's topic was more of purpose. So we stop at well-formed outcomes today.
Now I have to attend the next session then. All right.
See you then.
Anybody else has any questions? We would be more than happy to address them. All right, it seems everyone's okay. So just giving you an introduction to the next session that we will be having on the second week. And that's going to be on well-formed outcomes. So that is going to be on the 22nd of May. Same time, same place. I will be sharing the links again with you all. So you're more than welcome to please join us again. And if you have any feedback, please do let us know. Anything that you'd like to address in the next session, please do let us know. We would be more than happy to address it and include it in our session as well. Diane, anything that you'd like to speak about?
I think I've said what I planned to say, and probably a bit more besides.
And we have also put this, the recording of the last video has been put up on our YouTube channel. I've already shared the links. I'll be sharing them again with you all. And you are more than welcome to go and watch that, as well as this video is also going to go up on the YouTube channel. So you can see a recap of this. And we will see you on the 22nd of May at 4:30, inshallah, if you're interested in how to do the well-formed outcome for yourself and for your business.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone, so much for attending. It was lovely. Thank you. So most of the people in today's sessions were business leaders. And that is why I was taking the questions towards that and examples towards that, because they were most business leaders of small businesses based here in Dubai.
Excellent. Yeah.
Yes. But then
why do you think we got so many this week and we didn't get them last time? Why do you think they didn't come to the first one? Just one of those things.
Yeah, I have no idea. Maybe I think the shifting the time from 4 to 4:30.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, because 4 o'clock still, it's like, okay, after lunch, people are still working till 4:30 is the time when people start getting free.
Okay.
So
So maybe next time. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Now, you surprised me a little bit when you said we were going to go into detail on the well-formed outcomes in the next webinar, because I was thinking next time we would look at the congruence bit and talk about self-development.
Start with the well-formed outcomes, because today they had put in questions, they wanted details. So we'll give 10 minutes to that and then move into congruence.
Okay, good. Yes. Yeah, I didn't read what was in the chat, actually.
I'm sorry?
I wasn't reading the comments that were coming in.
Okay, yeah. So there were questions, and Nisar asked about how to do it.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So what I will recommend that is that, keeping the first 10 minutes of the next webinar on sharing some examples of well-formed outcomes, especially from business perspective, business leaders perspective. And then we carry it from there to congruence.
Yes.
We marry it with congruence.
Because it's all about goals anyway. So, yes.
Exactly. And, when we talk about leaders, no matter how much you tell them, the mind works on goals.
Yes.
So it's important, I think, and it's kind of like the bait also for the next one, because I was seeing there was a lot of, on my WhatsApp, there was a lot of messages which were coming about, there's a new way of goal setting we didn't know about. So I was like, okay, so this is something which they are liking to hear. So, it's a little bit of shift for the next one. So we keep just 10 minutes on the well-formed outcomes. So I'll also promote it with, well-formed outcomes and congruence, how it creates congruence.
Yes.
So we link it with that. So how well-formed outcomes can create congruence in your business and your leadership.
Yes. I like that. Yes, that's good.
Yeah. So
I think that
it
went well
was,
today. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I think that went well today.
Oh, it went very well.
I would have liked to have seen some faces though. It would have really helped me to see who I was talking to.
Typical out here.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just writing that question so that I'm going to put this question as the, kind of in the promotional thing. I'll share it with you so you can add your thoughts, and then I'll give it to the team to create the promotional material.
Yeah.
All right. So I have this question. I'm going to send it across to you, and inshallah. What was your, I know, I'm sorry, I kind of like gave you some real surprise questions and surprise
No, that's
elements.
okay. It's fine. Yes, I'm quite happy for you to do that.
Perfect. I was like, I need to ask Diane if this is okay with her, because when, as we see the audience coming in, if there is more of corporate people, we will keep it more channelized towards that.
But you know the
we
people,
had a good
so
mix.
I need you to give me that guidance. Yes.
Yeah. No, I think we had a good mix today. We had people from the corporate as well, and we had people from the business as well. And these are business leaders, there are some who are like, for example, Nisar, I know he comes from an IT background. He has been a chief technology officer in an organization for quite some time before he actually moved out and started his own business, which has been just 2 years back. He was in Amsterdam. So he came back from there to Dubai and he started his business. So there are people who come from the corporate business, corporate background. But then these are things which are anathema to them because they were so focused in that only technical expertise aspect of their business, So leadership was not something which was thought from their perspective that it is something which is about behavior or, any other skill excepting for the technical skill that I have. So that's the reason why I was like, okay, looking at the mix, Shailika was from corporate. Then Musa was from corporate, Ninad was from corporate. So these are coming from corporate. And then there are some people like Godly has a group of companies out here. So he's the owner of a group of companies. They have different types of businesses and they are quite big name here. It was a mix of, the participants. So we had to keep both the elements there, leadership in corporates and leadership in business.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah, nice that we are getting a kind of a mixed audience, not only attracting one type of person. Yeah,
and Godly has very good connects in corporates like Emirates Airlines and Etihad and all of these. So he can definitely refer us to them if he's somebody with the best.
Yes. Oh, that sounds good.
Yes, indeed. It went very well. Thank you so much for being in, I know that, and I think even you will agree with this, being NLPers, we cannot be fixed about the territory. Sorry, the map.
Absolutely.
We cannot be fixed about the map. We go with the territory. So the territory was there and it was like, okay, let's be flexible with the map. And that's why I go I went ahead knowing that, okay, I'll talk to Diane about this later, that Diane, we need to go with the territory, not with the map.
No, that's fine. I'm very happy to follow your lead. It's kind of reassuring for me because I know that you know who we're talking to, and so your questions are steering me into telling them, what's going to be most useful. Yeah,
exactly. So keeping more of business and corporate and business leaders, as your examples, perfect.
Yeah.
The businesses that you work with, those will be amazing. Like the IT example which you gave was perfect.
Yeah,
before
that's my favorite example. I just think it was so smart.
It was very nice. So keeping this as it's beautifully done. Very well. Thank you so much for being there with me and coming along.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Right.
I'm ready for some lunch now because it's 2:30. It's a long time since breakfast.
Yeah, I haven't had anything to eat as well, so I'm gonna go and munch something. I haven't actually got time to have lunch today, so I'm gonna go.
So you've been racing around Dubai all day, have you?
Oh yeah, well, it's good. Yeah, I'm happy that it ended well. So good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, lovely to see you, and
Lovely to see you
let's talk again soon.
Inshallah. I will, when do you finish your course and go back?
Tomorrow. So I'll be finished 1 o'clock tomorrow.
All right. So tomorrow, you go back tomorrow?
Yes.
All right. So then let's catch up next week.
Mhm.
Around Monday, Tuesday. Let's catch up on WhatsApp, fix up a time and sit down.
Yes. Okay. Great.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.